these are some of the issues that you have when you play a trappy line, is if your opponent doesn't fall for it, you got to kind of figure out how to, survive the opening and get to a middle game that you can actually have a fighting chance. So I'm thinking about just playing knight to f5. I'm like pretty sure it's not the right move. But sometimes if you go for these super tricky moves and you don't remember what to play, you can actually get into trouble. And that's what I'm afraid of. So a lot of times what I'll do instead is just play like a normal looking move and the game goes on, right? Like this is normal. If d6 happens, I would just take it with my knight and I defend that way. I think that's what I'm going to do. Practically, I think this is a good decision. I'm 90% sure the move is b5. I just don't remember what to do after the retreat. So we'll check it after the game and we'll see what I forgot. But for now, I'm just going to go with knight f5. Okay. Now I'm going to take with my king, not my knight, because I would have to move my knight backwards. And I wanted to, get my rooks into the game anyway. Now they're connected. They can go wherever they want. And using your king at the end of the game is a good strategy. So one thing, whenever you're playing these Italian game types of positions where you have the bishop along this diagonal, you always want to ask yourself, do you have any tactics? And when I see a bishop here that's undefended, and I'm just kind of pairing all this information together, what do you guys notice? There's got to be a tactic, right? If I get a free pawn, black loses castling rights, and I get the bishop back. Now, queen to h5 first almost looks like it would do the same thing, except it doesn't work because the queen would actually defend everything. And then, yeah, I mean, I guess you could still play here and take the bishop, but I don't think that's as good. So yeah, we are going to go for this. Just always be scanning. And if something like this pops up, you'll be ready for it. Queen h5 check. Sometimes it's on d5 too. Like if these pawns are gone, sometimes you do the same thing with queen to d5, like this. It doesn't always have to be on h5. But in this case, this is another way to do it. And I'm expecting h5, and I'll just push by. All right, there you go. And now what I've done is, we'll see if our opponent sees it. What I've done is blunder. Oh my. All right, guys. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I think we can potentially still win because we have these pawns rolling, but all of a sudden the game got really difficult. Man. It happens to everybody. It happens to everybody. You get a little bit overconfident and then bam, you lose a rook. You just lose a rook. I mean, I think everybody does this, right? You get focused on something that's happening in the position, right? And you're like, okay, well, the way that you deal with this is g5. You get the 2 pawns. Everything looks great. I was playing very quickly here. I remember, right? Yeah, 2 seconds. And I just forgot that I needed the bishop to defend the rook. I just forgot about it for a second. So, good lesson here. You blunder. Do you resign immediately? Do you panic? Do you, what do you do, right? I said, okay, what do I still have going for me in this position? Well, I still have these pawns. And, the rook is behind it. Black is not developed. And so I tried to kind of just make the best of that. Now I'm thinking about the move bishop g5 because I thought that the response was going to be bishop e7. But now if black plays bishop e7, they just wasted a move. They went here and then they went back, which I have to feel good about that. So how else can black respond? f6 doesn't look good at all. That's going to just open up the king. I guess they could move the queen, but that seems like an awkward place for the queen to be. And then I guess there's knight to e7. Also feels like a little bit of an awkward move, putting themselves into a pin. So with all that in mind, I think bishop g5 seems like a pretty nice move. And probably black's best move would just be to go back and just say, you know what, I wasted a move, but I have to deal with this threat. So I think that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I don't see any reason not to do that. And it's a move that I would want to play anyway, right? Developing a piece. So a lot of times, if you're thinking about a move and it lines up with kind of the general principles in the position of like, let me try to get my pieces developed, it's probably a good sign that that's a good move. So that's what I think happening here. I'm debating. Do we take? Black's going to take with the queen. There's going to be some pressure on this pawn. Not really super concerned because I can slide the rook over. But I could also just maybe retreat and leave this here. It's kind of cramping up Black's position a little bit. So that's why I'm kind of considering this move as well. I wish I had this follow-up, but it's not really that great because Black could just trade probably. Yeah, I think I will. I'm going to go bishop f4. And it's kind of just awkward, like, where's Black's queen going to go? That's what I'm thinking through. And when I take, it makes it very clear. They just simply take back. They have some pressure on this. They can actually castle either direction. This way, their position is more cramped. So I think I like the look of that. I think I will take. Okay, they took back right away, which just blunders a pawn, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I think we're just going to take this guy. We've got it defended with the queen. And you do want to pay attention because it's lined up with the queen, that there are no discovered checks on my king, right? Because I could lose my queen if that were the case. But this is obviously blocking that off. And the bishop can't go over here and put me in check that way, so I'm fine. But just whenever you have your pieces lined up with another piece like that, you got to pay attention, right? Because a lot of times this move would be available to white, and I could very easily lose my queen. But in this case, we're okay. Oh, and you know what? I could even let this happen, take back with the pawn, and unleash the rook. That's another idea. So lots of interesting stuff going on here. So yeah, bishop d6 looks pretty good. Knight g4 looks pretty good. Maybe a queen move looks pretty good. I'm kind of just trying to fill my mind with all these ideas. And then hopefully after white makes a move, I'll be a little bit more ready to play something because I already have sort of the candidate moves in the back of my mind, right? So regarding pre-moving, I am going to start looking for safe pre-moves. You kind of got to plan, like, what are all the possible moves that your opponent could do? Can you play any safe moves? So here's a good one. I could pre-move that safely because I knew the king had to move. This looks like a good... I'm not going to pre-move it, but actually it might be a safe pre-move, yeah. Only one move, so I can pre-move this. Pre-move this. Notice they're all safe moves. Like I know that my opponent can't take my queen or put me in checkmate or something if I play these moves, right? That's what you need to look for when you're pre-moving. But notice the importance of trying to strike at the center as quickly as you can if somebody's attacking you on the flank. Because if you don't do that and you don't create these counter chances to attack them, well, then they're just going to have plenty of time to do whatever they want. And eventually they are going to figure out a way to attack your king, right? But by creating these threats, white doesn't have time. They don't have time to bring their queen up and castle and bring the other rook over and start doing whatever they want to do. They have to deal with my threats. And once they deal with this one, I'm probably going to play e4 and create some more threats. And maybe rook e8, e4, or e4 right away, followed by rook e8. I'm not sure yet. But the point is you don't just give them time to attack your king. It's kind of important. All right, let's just make sure. Let's just say the queen sacks this side. Now I have it defended enough. So there we go. Queen sack doesn't cut it. And now it's a big question. Do I take the rook or do I take the bishop? I'm going to take the bishop. Generally speaking, it's better to take a free piece than a rook and lose a piece. So that's called winning the exchange. This is winning a free piece. You know, one thing to remember is when you're attacking, you can't just sacrifice your pawns and that's all there is to it. Like, you have to look at what's going to happen after the pawns are taken. And I was able to create this blockade to where even though white had the open files, they couldn't get through. I think if white would have been a little bit slower in pushing those pawns, prepared it a little bit more, probably would have had more success. All right, so with Caro-Kann, we're going to just play knight c3, and I'm going to play my typical gambit line, bishop c4, followed by f3. Very tricky line for black to deal with if they haven't seen it before. Pretty common move here is bishop, g4. And the game is basically over. Now we can take with the bishop, or we can play knight to e5. They're both very good. We'll go for knight to e5. Maybe we get a quick checkmate, and we will. So this is kind of the trap. It happens a lot. Even at like 2400 level, I've seen people just play bishop g4 immediately. There you go. Fritz Gambit? Is that what it's called? A Fritz Gambit? Knight to d4? Yeah, Fritz variation. We played this before in this rating climb. They didn't fall for our trap. We were hoping for d6, and we didn't get it. But let's see if this person plays d6. Aha! Ahaha! So here we go. They're going for this. And what we do is allow them to do it. So we take the pawn. We allow the fork. And we go for queen c6. And the point here is we don't care about the rook because we have big threat over here on g2. Even though we're attacking the bishop, this is actually a bigger threat. And interesting, they defend the bishop. They don't deal with this, which... And the fact that they didn't take this doesn't really change anything, I don't think. So here we go. We're going to go here. This is the problem for white. The rook is basically gone unless you go to f1. But if you go to f1, you run into queen e4 and it's all over. That's what we're seeing. So this is the idea, and we got lucky enough to see it today. White has to either give up the queen or get smothered checkmated. So it's not a good choice either way. They decide to go for the smothered checkmate. And good game to our opponent. That worked out perfectly. That's the point. That's how you want the Fritz variation to go. Yeah, I think I see an idea, though. I think I see an idea. Once these things get locked up over here, we can go here. Attack this guy. And then infiltrate with our king. I am going to play a5. I like my pawn being on the opposite color of this bishop because it can't attack me. And now these pawns are stuck, and I can attack them at some point. So that looks really good to me. All right, let's go here. Black's going to have to move the king over, and then we can infiltrate. Yeah, and black's going to be in trouble here. So here we go. And now I have options to come this way or just to keep pressuring here if I want. Lots of ways to do this. Also, our opponent kind of messed up here by putting their pawns on the same color. This means I can always come here and attack them, which is just gives me more things to attack. So they probably should have played something like a5, b6, and at least they don't have to ever worry about those pawns. My bishop's never going to be able to attack them if they would have done that. Okay, so he goes here to attack the queen. So let's see, where do we want to move to? Queen, probably a5 is typically where I like to put the queen when it gets attacked by the knight. Because when you go on the diagonal with one space in between, the knight can't attack you for a while. It takes 3 moves for the knight to attack you. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we do have knight h2, which I'm pretty happy to see because it allows me to open up. Now I have to be careful. Looks like I'll lose a piece here to a little tactic. So I probably don't want to do that right now. But I am actually considering it. Is there any follow-up tactic? Don't think so. Probably not quite worth it. We have knight to d4 to attack the queen. Maybe force it back to d1. And then we could take, and if the queen went there, we would have bishop f5, and I wouldn't lose a piece. So that seems like a very good move, actually. So basically what I'm doing is just looking through the position. I'm identifying, the problem here is that I'm going to lose a piece to a fork. And I'm noticing that I can play knight to d4, a little in-between move, which solves my problem because it gives me a new option of bishop f5. And then I can take, which is what I wanted to do anyway. Here's the thing, guys. If we play f4, we have this knight super solidified. But then black has the exact same thing. And they're going to put their knight there, and it's going to be kind of the same position. I'm thinking of not doing that and saving this move f3. because then it stops what black is trying to do, and we can actually try to break at the center somehow. So that's what I'm considering. These positions are kind of tricky to play when both players, do this same setup. It's sort of weird, and I'm not really that familiar with them. So I'm going to play b3. This is the same style of the Zuckertor, where you put the bishop over here. Okay, they are going for it. So now you can see, I could play f3 right now, and they have to move, which I kind of like. It just makes them waste a move. So let's do that. Notice black can't do the same thing to me because they've already advanced both of their pawns. They don't have a pawn that can attack my knight. This is another important thing. A lot of times if somebody opens up the h-file like this, if you have a rook on the second rank, you can very easily swing it across. And it's a great, not only a defender of your king, but as we saw, an attacking piece. And I mean, I could have easily done this too. Made a battery with the queen and the rook and had even more firepower there. So definitely keep that idea in mind. Bring your rook up and over, and you can defend that way. I'm going to be playing these games a little bit differently. So usually when I play, I try to kind of calculate like, okay, I'm going to make this move because let's see what's going to happen. And it looks like a good move. The other way that sometimes I will play chess is just kind of with my instincts, with my intuition. So I've played chess for a long time. I've played a lot of chess games. And a lot of times I just have this feeling for like, oh, I probably should just move here. It just seems like a good move. So you can play chess that way. Now, you want to kind of do a little bit of both. You don't want to just completely like never calculate. But sometimes you can actually calculate so much that you just kind of get overwhelmed. You end up making a bad decision. Whereas if you would have just went with your instincts, you might have played a better move. So this is turning into potentially the Danish gambit if I just keep taking these pawns. Usually when I see this, what I like to do is play d5. So here, again, kind of just going with my instincts. I'm not going to think through every little thing. I know that, like, if they play c3, usually I can play d5. And the point is that I can recapture this, and there's no knight that can jump to c3 and attack my queen. And now we actually have an isolated pawn that can be a target for us. So already we have two pieces attacking it. Now it's defended, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on this. So, again, just kind of thinking through, my instincts just tell me, like, hey, put some pressure on that. That seems like a good move. So I'm going to play bishop g4. I didn't calculate every little thing. Again, kind of going with my instincts. Knight to c3, attacks my queen. I think I'm going to pin it so that I don't have to worry about losing my queen. And the nice thing about when you play this way is you can play a lot faster and usually still pretty good moves. I would say the disadvantage is sometimes you will miss little tactics that maybe you would see if you sort of try to calculate everything. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the times that your instincts are probably right if you're somebody who's played quite a few games of chess. Now, if you're brand new, probably that's not really going to work for you, okay? And probably the best thing about my position, of course, I'm up the piece, but also the fact that white can't castle. That's huge. Remember, you cannot castle through a check. So when you castle, you have to move your king 2 times, essentially. And if either of those, lands on a check like this, you can't do it. So that's great news for me. I'm going to go ahead and castle queenside. We've got pressure here. We've got a pin. We've got the king stuck in the center with the rook about to come over. It looks very good. All right, so let's go ahead and snag some pawns. Okay, usually when somebody's attacking with rooks like this, the easiest thing to do is just push your pawn forward because you immediately defend it with the pawn, which is a very, nice defender. Okay. The other thing, what if I take first? I'm just wondering what happens there. Because if he tries to save the bishop, then it's over. That's too bad. So he would have to move this probably to b3. Oh, and then I take the bishop. Yeah, so instead of taking first here, I don't give him the option to play a3. All right, so just to explain, guys, there's 2 options. I either take the bishop or I take the knight. I was thinking of taking this first because then I have a pin and I'm going to win a knight. But I'm actually not going to win a knight because there's this little idea of a3, which saves the piece, essentially. Because then, if I take, I lose a bishop. Yes, I can take here, but the rook just moves over and the game goes on. Same thing, if I go back, there's b4. If I take the knight, I lose the bishop. But if I do it first, I have this amazing threat here, which white has to deal with. They can't save their bishop. And once they deal with it, they've already lost a piece, and then I take it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So I had it backwards initially, but I was able to find it, you know, a little bit later. And sometimes that happens, right? The position becomes more clear to you, you could find the best move. And we do see g3. Yeah, it's super logical looking move, but it's not good because the tactic right here. Bam. And the reason I'm playing this so quickly is because I've studied this. I remember this line. I've played this line a lot of times in blitz, especially against like strong players, because it looks really logical. But the queen comes in, and because we have the bishop here, the king can't go back. You have to come up. Only move. And then we go here, and we're basically just hunting the king, and it's coming out. It has to. And even though you can go here, that's not where you want your king. You don't want your king on e4. Yeah, and then white's going to get checkmated in this game. So we're going to play c5. This I remember as well. You have to defend the knight. And it looks like the king can just keep going, but then we play b6. And the point is we're defending these crucial pieces, and all the while, white's king is just getting further and further from home. And there's going to be a checkmate. I just have to see if I can find it. That's the question. Queen to f6. All right, so that's a solid move. He's defending the threat, offering a trade. Rather than trading and allowing black to get a free developing move, I'm going to leave it and let black take me and develop my knight for free. So while I kind of wait for that to happen, it might not happen, but I'm going to play knight c3 instead. Maybe threatening this. And if black wants to trade, that's fine. One thing to keep in mind in these endgames is the king placement in relation to the passed pawns. So if I were to, you know, gobble up all of these pawns and start pushing these guys, it's going to be difficult for black to stop that because the king is way over here. If the king was in front of that, it would be a different story. Same could be said about my king, though. If black is able to, let's say, grab this, and then, I don't know, maybe go here and start grabbing these pawns and start pushing these, I might have a hard time stopping those because my king is kind of far away, right? Knight to a8. 57% say don't take the knight. You guys don't want a free knight? Your king will get trapped. Okay, but what about our knight over here? So this is what people are saying. If we take it, our king gets trapped. That's true, but we still have a knight, right? So yeah, there's an interesting thing here. If this was a bishop, this would be a winning position because you could force the king away. Imagine if it's a bishop sitting here. King has to move somewhere. Anywhere, here, or here, or here, or here. And then bam, your king escapes, right? So that's what we need to try to accomplish with our knight. Right? Force the king away. Now we can get out. Problem is, it's our turn. We have to move. And guess what? We got to move the knight away. And there's this common misconception that if you just kind of like waste a bunch of moves jumping around the board, you'll be able to fix the problem, right? Because surely if I, you know, time it right, I can do this, right? Keep trying. Watch what happens. It doesn't matter how many times you jump around. It's always going to land in the same configuration. And again, we have the same problem. It's our turn. If it was black's turn, easy win. King has to move. Like here, 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 here. It has to do with the fact that because knights always switch colors, so it's on a dark square, but then it goes on a light square, then it goes on a dark square, you can't lose a tempo like you can with the bishop. You got a bishop, you just chill. Move back one move, whatever. You waste a turn. It's easy to do with bishops or rooks or queens. You can't do it with knights. All right, hopefully that makes sense. All right, d4. Let's play the King's Indian. I haven't played that. I'm always going to play the London, man. And you could still play the King's Indian against the London, but not like it's fun. I'm going to play knight to h5. I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit. See if we can take white out of their comfort zone. That's what I like to do against players who are, you know what they're going to do. They're going to play the London. It's the same every time. At least this way, this is probably going to be a little different than what they're used to seeing. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's what I'm going for. Play normal this time. We'll go with bishop b5. Bishop b5 check. Bishop there. Okay, there's two ways you can play it. You can take, or you can play a4. I like to play a4 unless I'm playing like a grandmaster or something. I think the technical best move is to trade. But against anybody below like GM level, I usually play this. Because you get this annoying pressure here, and the pawn stops the knight from the normal development. So I like to do it this way. All right, so bishop g5, I like the idea here. Pinning that in closed off positions. Knights a lot of times outperform bishops, so I would be okay even trading this bishop for this knight. Yeah, I would be okay doing this. Normally, you don't want to do this, because then you have no way to oppose this bishop. Because the way the pawns are set up, and it's a locked up position, I think I am going to take it. I think I am. And I'm going to basically say my knights are going to be more effective in this locked up type of a game. So here we go. Knight to d5, very powerful knight already, you can see. And I need to figure out how to make this guy powerful as well.